All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another London is Blue podcast clip. On this one, this is our West Brom match review. So we had Nizaar Kinsella from Goal join us. This is just one of the clips we have from that episode. If you want to listen to the full thing, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get it. Links are in the description, so check it out now. But until next time, Chelsea fans, enjoy this video and make sure to like and subscribe our YouTube channel.
All right, well, we can take this and lead into it. The first question I want to dig into is the lineup, individual errors, or the system, which is to blame, maybe a combination of all. So there's a lot to break down in this match, mainly how Chelsea found themselves 3 goals down versus a side that has struggled so mightily against Everton, Leicester. I mean, we just need to call it what it is. They are not a great team. There's 3 places we can start our investigation, as I discussed. So lineup, individual errors, and/or the system of play. We've covered the lineup a little bit. We've only heard from 2 people on that one. I think obviously Nick with this 3-word match review has said the individual errors is a big thing for him. Naz, from your standpoint, I guess are one of those 3 factors standing out as a bigger cause for concern to you than the others, maybe?
Yeah, I think from Frank Lampard's perspective, he says it's individual errors, it's not a tactical thing. But I can't really buy that because he changed the tactics at half time straight away to 4-3-3, which worked, and it's credit to him, really. And yeah, it meant that Mason Mount was playing his right position. Mount's not really a winger. I quite like him in the wide positions when they play with 3 at the back, because the kind of wingers, they kind of tuck inside a little bit more. And we've seen, like against Man United in the FA Cup semi-final, that Mount links really well with Giroud, and that kind of works because he's still in that central area, a bit like Kai Havertz likes to be in the central area. But Frank had to change the system to get the game back in check. So yeah, there was individual errors, but it's also systemic, the problems, in my opinion. So yeah, those are the ways I look at it, really. And I think that, that's sort of how I label it. And I think that Frank's in this experimentation period where he's got like an unbelievable amount of options, especially in attack, and he's just sort of experimenting. One thing doesn't work, he changes. And it is credit to the coaching that these players, and the recruitment, that these players are the kind of players that can play many positions. But you need to have sort of a plan A, and maybe that's not what Chelsea have got, is a plan A that they can stick to, where a lot of their players are in the right positions and they do play really well. So yeah, that's my concern with it. I don't know if you guys would agree, but that's sort of my feeling. Early in the season, we're in this sort of experimentation phase.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It was obvious when Mason dropped into midfield, which will be my eye test later, that the game started to flow better for Chelsea. Like, there was more passing lanes opened up. Callum obviously provided some really great width, and we'll get to him in a second. But the balance was better. I think what you saw in the first half, Dan, was a midfield pivot that was all over the place between Conte and Kovacic. And although I didn't think that Kovacic played as bad as other people did necessarily, it wasn't working. All they wanted to do was sit back. And when you have essentially, of your 11 players on the pitch, you have 7 that are trying to attack the box, and you basically leave Thiago Silva alone, and unfortunately makes a mistake. Like, that's what you bought and paid for at that point. So it was kind of a misguided formation, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'll touch on the individual errors pieces, because I think the system at large is where a lot of the questions still lie, and there's a lot to be answered. It's not building a Lego set, right? It's not like the Frank Lampard got an instruction book with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces you need to assemble to get the maximum out of this side. This is cooking. This is cooking in a kitchen, right? You have an abundance of ingredients, and it's a little bit more artistic. With the individual errors, I think Naz, with the call out of Lampard, dropping kind of name of Alonso twice in his post-match commentary, had a really, really awful game. Thiago with the slip was quite unfortunate. The whole back structure, with the way that Alonso and Reece James were pushing forward in this game, did no favors for Christensen, did no favors for Thiago Silva. They were so far advanced at points, and they were trying to run back in position. And I mean, credit to West Brom for very much, understanding exactly what was happening, right? Reece was so far forward, Alonso was so far forward that they could leave Robinson essentially past the midfield line just in front of Silva, and Kovacic was ahead of him. Conte was ahead of him. And so all they needed to do is break one ball really, really quick, and they were in a position to capitalize and be on a 2v1 or a 3v2 without any much of an issue. And what happened is we just didn't compress enough in that section, Brandon, to actually give ourselves the opportunity to try to kind of win back or force more of their attacking players back to actually try to be involved in their defense. They were really gambling on the fact that we weren't actually going to close down appropriately, and surprise, we did not close down appropriately.
I think so. Frank wants to play this 4-2-3-1 formation. I think that's what we can kind of get out of this. He started
he
with
wants to get the best out of Kai. Like, I think that's the whole reason. That's the emphasis for it.
As he should. The problem is the pieces around him. That nullified Werner having to play like a Willian and tracking all the way back, not near the box. It put Kovacic in a weird spot where he was getting caught in possession in dangerous parts of the field, which also is pretty uncharacteristic for him. But partially it's because he's used to playing in a midfield 3 that's a little bit more fluid than the 2 and then the 3 in front. And so I think that it's they're still, if they're going to progress, they need to progress with this. Obviously, they need to feel themselves out. Then you get people talking about, we need different personnel to play this role. Really, you need Ziyech back. We need Pulisic back. We need like proper wide players back. And we can talk about Callum a little bit later. But right now, you've got Mount and Timo Werner playing as the wide players, and that's not their strong suit. Maybe Mason Mount is better suited to that, but not a Timo Werner. So now your problem is, where does Timo play going forward? What?
Can I disagree with the Timo point? Because he played off the left wing a lot before for Leipzig. I mean, this is not a
But that's an attacking role. He's now in a midfield role.
Well, not really.
Much more defensive responsibilities.
Yeah, he had to track back, and space was limited on that side. They were clearly shading that side so that he didn't have the impact that he wanted to have. And then thus, Reece James had all this, they elected to let Reece James, with all of his passing ability, get in behind 1,000 times yesterday because they were so concerned about Werner. But, Werner has played off the left, and he's comfortable playing off the left, apparently, from what I've seen in his tape from Leipzig. So I was confused as to why it seemed so hard for him yesterday. And it maybe, I don't know. Go ahead.
I think I'll jump in on that one. Just with Werner, it was his worst game in a Chelsea shirt, which, I've actually been amazingly impressed with him to be good to Chelsea. But, he was quiet, and he obviously missed that chance. But I think that in this 4-2-3-1 with Werner, he's got to track back even more, than like a 4-3-3 where at least he has another man behind him. He always had like Kai behind him or whatever, but Kai's number 10. He's basically like a striker, as we saw against Barnsley. He's possibly the biggest goal threat in the squad in that formation. So you just have a guy who's really single-mindedly. You basically have a front 4, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, but you're always going to be vulnerable really to counterattacks down the side. And then, Kovacic, I think he's a great tackler. He moves about the pitch brilliantly, but he doesn't read the game so well. So when they do break, I think that Kovacic is a player you can bypass. And there's 2 different types of defensive, play really. There's reading the game, and then there's actually making the tackle. And Kovacic is a great technical defender, but in terms of his actual reading the play, I mean, he used to be an attacking midfielder. He's just not quite got that. And then when he's exposed in those positions, we see him make mistakes, and we've seen it time and again. And I think that can be a problem for Chelsea in the future, really, if they go with this formation. I'm a bit concerned about the 4-2-3-1, about whether it will actually be the future for Chelsea. I mean, it's good for Kai, but I think maybe Kai as a number 8 might be the better approach, as we saw in the second half.
So, and that's kind of, I guess, where I was going to go to is I think when Timo is able to play out wide left, he just sits up there, kind of like we've seen Nizaar do, where he doesn't really come back. So if you can set the team up to make it so he can, because I think he likes to lurk in space and then find opportunities to pop in through the center backs. We just need him to stay up there. Like, don't come back.
That's the point, right? When Mason is on that side as a number 8 and there's cover, boy, does that open up a myriad of possibilities for Werner, right? Because you don't have to worry as much about doing that work coming back. It's a more balanced formation, right? You see the passing's more balanced. And if the passing's more balanced and the position's more balanced, then I think it's just whatever. We saw the result.
Yeah. So obviously, we talked with Naz already about the Alonso comments and getting called out. Look, Timo and Tammy didn't convert in the first half. Very, very easily. Should have had one. If, they're firing on all cylinders, you definitely have 2, which changes the game. We talked a little bit about Kovacic. So I think, for me, that's where a lot of it comes down to is 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. Obviously, doesn't matter. If your center back slips and lets a guy in on goal, it doesn't really matter what you do. If your left back heads the ball into space, doesn't really matter what you do in those situations.
We saw the psychological problem of mistakes as well. So Chelsea's head did drop after the second goal, which was just a freak accident, and they weren't actually that bad. Like they weren't great, but they weren't awful either. So it was kind of like there was a shell shock period up until half time, really, and then the mentality switched.